Well, good morning, everyone. I'm recording this a little bit later than normal, so it's no longer morning here, but that's okay. I've had an eventful couple of days here. You know that I was working the last 2 days prior to this, and we had a little event at work, so I'm just going to do a quick aside, and then we'll get into the lesson. Somebody came into work who had been exposed to meningitis. And when they figured that out, this person had been all over the place. And they finally shut the production down, called everybody together, said, just go sit, wait, we're going to have the big people call the other big people, and we're going to decide what to do. And so we did, and they eventually read something from one of the big corporate guys, and basically they stopped everything for the time being and sent everybody home. And that's all they did. That's all they said. I was close to this person on one of the days, so I took the precaution of calling my doctor, and they said, we'll call you in an antibiotic prescription. So I'm now on an antibiotic for 2 weeks. I don't have symptoms or nothing like that, and it's too early to know anyway. But meningitis is not good. The funny part of this is I was reading the side effects of the medicine, and my God, it's worse than the disease sometimes. Okay, so there's some terminology that I want to go over with on the time that we're in. There's a group out there that likes to use the terminology and intermingle it, and even though they're separate terms, they put them all together, and then they argue that we've only got one rapture, and that's at the end. These poor people, they've fallen for Satan's lies for so long. Probably in the 4th century, they came up with the idea that the Bible was figurative. These are all allegories. These are all, Jesus used them in his teachings as parables, but he did it on purpose for him because he didn't want the religious leaders of the day to understand the truth. You see, that's why you speak in a parable or an allegory, because you don't want people to have the truth. The rest of the Bible is not like that. And he explained the parables to his own disciples so they would know. So the idea that the whole Bible is just one big, fairy tale, allegory, nothing you read is true, so therefore there's nothing that you should be doing. You don't have to do anything. The Bible doesn't tell you to do anything. It just gives you stories to listen to that are sometimes scary and sometimes fun. Well, the truth of the matter is, most, if not all, the Bible, except for Jesus' parables, is literal. Okay? And when it wasn't, it was explained that it was deliberately done, and that here's the truth. So basically, the Bible is literal. So when it comes to Revelation and the prophets, they're literal too. Now you say, well, how about, Ezekiel's visions? He was describing in terms of what he knew at the time. Chariots flying, chariots of fire, whatever, we got movies about it and things. He was describing in what he knew at the time. Nobody had ever seen cars and airplanes and whatever gadgets you can come up with. So that's how we interpret it. But he was literal in what he saw. He described what he saw literally. And the New Testament and the Old Testament are both that way. And the Old Testament is definitely that way. We have a very valid history in the Bible that we can verify. We've found places that were talked about that people said, well, this is allegory. And we've found the cities. We've found Jericho and the walls that had tumbled down. We've found a lot of these places that they thought were just stories. Okay, so what I want to look at is we have the last days, the end times, and the end of days. 3 different variations. Okay, and so I want to explain what they mean and what time period that they cover. And we're going to look at some scriptures for it. Now, first off, the end times, as those 2 words are not in the Bible. That is in modern day interpretation. I use it because it has modern day understanding. You guys know that I'm talking about right now. We're in the end times. Okay? That's why I'm using that terminology. The last days, well, let's take a quick look at a scripture verse. Let's turn to Hebrews 1:1. Okay, come on, mouse, stop acting up. There we go. God's supreme revelation. God, who at various times in various ways spoke in time past to the fathers by the prophets. Verse 2, has in these last days spoken to us by his Son, whom he has appointed heir of all things, through whom also he has made the worlds. So he's explaining to us the last days are being spoken of by Jesus, who was there when they created everything. Okay. 2 Timothy 3:1. But understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty. For people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good. Well, we saw in the previous verse, the last day started with Jesus, going through to the end. This started with Jesus and is going through to the end. Continuing on, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. It's pretty well describes the world now, but it's described the world the way it's been the last couple of thousand years, having the appearance of godliness but denying its power. Avoid such people. So that's the advice we have. So we are definitely in the last days, but we have been since Jesus. So to claim that today is any different, it's not from the last days point of view. But let's look at the other terms. Like I said, the end times I use to describe where we currently are, but it's not in the Bible. So I want you to understand that. It's what everybody understands the end times to mean. So Jesus does make a distinction. So let's turn to Matthew 13:39. The enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age. The reapers are the angels. The end of the age is at the very end. Okay? In the middle, well, towards the end, but at the time that we're in now, we're in the end of times. Therefore the tares are gathered and burned in fire, so it will be at the end of this age. So it will be at the end of the age, the angels will come forth and separate the wicked from among the just. The sheep and the goats, we know that. This is the people that predict there's only one rapture, and that's at the very end. This is the verse they use for that. And they claim that the last days is the same as the end of times, or the end of days, or the end of the age. They're misusing it. They're using the allegory format. You've got to read this stuff literally. Matthew 24:3. The signs of the times and the end of the age, okay, is what this is titled. Now as he sat down on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? So his coming is first, the end of the age is second in the timeline. And we just saw the final gathering and separating of people is at the end of the age. So that's the final thing. The tribulation is in there. We have the pre-trib rapture is in there. They don't want that. They want there to only be one rapture. Miserable people these people have to be, that they know they're going to go through the tribulation and they're going to suffer worse than anything else that's ever happened on the earth. They believe they're going to go through it. There's no need for it. You arrogant people that you think that the world was designed around you and all this end time stuff is around you. No, it's not. It's around the Jews, the chosen people, that refuse to accept. So God is going out of his way, which is hard to do when you're omnipresent, out of his way to impress upon the chosen people and the rest of the world while they're at it, that God meant what he said. Follow me, follow my son, and you will get to heaven. No other way will get you there, period. So he's given them as strong of a warning as he can, knowing that there's no more warning after this. This is the final message. Accept Jesus, or eternal damnation is yours. That's it. Okay. And there are three main events that we have coming up in these end times. We have the rapture, the pre-trib rapture. Now, there are people that try to believe that, and I tolerate the other raptures. If you're pre-wrath and you don't believe in the pre-trib, that's okay. We'll just be friends for a little while we prove to you that pre-trib is it. You will find out in the air that pre-trib is correct. I'm not worried about it. Since we're going to be right, you're going to find out early. If you were right, I'd find out late, and that doesn't sound good. I don't like that. But since we're pre-trib, you're going to find out early and be pleasantly surprised that we get out early. Okay. So we have the rapture, the great tribulation. The 70th week is not tribulation by definition or by name. It may be by definition, but not by name. The only part of the 70th week that's considered tribulation by name is the second part, and that's called the Great Tribulation. So the rest of it, in your life, you will have tribulation. So the rest of the time on earth is simply tribulation. Tribulation started at the beginning of the world. So we could always say that we're in tribulation. The distinction being the 70th week. When we get into that, and some people believe it's already started. We've already started the 70th week during the time of Jesus, they believe. Again, I'm open to that. I don't believe that, but I'm open to it. It doesn't matter. We've got work to do, and we're going to work up until the last second, and then we're going to get raptured out. Okay? And of course, the second coming is in this end times stuff that's coming. And the second coming is the time that we don't know the day or the hour. None of this other stuff is covered by that. It's the second coming that we don't know the day or the hour. Or the day of the Lord. However you want to look at that. Okay? So, times are going to get tough. Prep, like I tell you. And don't worry about all this conflicting stuff out there. Some of this stuff has been taught wrong for years. They didn't know any better. But that's okay. Don't worry about it. You've got your work to do. The gospel is more important than eschatology. Or hermeneutics is the study of the Bible. The gospel is the most important. Never have a disagreement with anybody about the gospel. Have that down rock solid. And then you'll be okay. Everything else will fall into place in its due time. Okay. I'm running a little behind today because I had to run into town and get a prescription for this meningitis stuff. I don't know that I have it. I don't know that I will get it. God willing, I won't. But because we were exposed, the doctor recommends that we go on an antibiotic for 2 weeks. Okay. Till we meet in the clouds, God bless.